Hello, I'm Danielle Lamotte, Vice President of Learning and Innovation with CSAE, and I'm joined today by Donna Dunn with Checker International Group. Donna will be co-facilitating the upcoming CSAE Symposium for Chief Staff and Chief Elected Officers. Welcome, Donna. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks. It's my pleasure to be here.
So Donna, we have just been through a couple of truly tumultuous years. I know you've been in the association sector for a considerable amount of time, and you speak with association leaders across North America on a very regular basis. I'm wondering what you think the greatest impact the pandemic has had on boards and not-for-profits and how they work.
Wow. It has been a challenging time. And for some organizations, 2020 was the worst. For some organizations, 2021 was the worst, in part because we have these constant, can we meet in person? Can we not meet in person? What's safe? What's not safe? How does this affect our members? How does this, depending on the industry or the profession people are in, the impact has been so broad and so differentiated that everyone has been challenged, and I think everyone's pretty exhausted, actually. What we're finding sort of in terms of organizations and boards and leadership in particular is learning new ways to work together. Learning, some organizations were very active in Zoom and WebEx and all of those. But boy, we learned how to do board meetings that way when we always did them face-to-face, or we did them mostly face-to-face, or we did conference calls. I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody calls me on the phone anymore. I get Zoom invites. And so it's been a challenge in so many ways that organizations have to figure out, how to get the work done. Staff is remote, staff is, part remote, part together, and it's been constantly evolving. So it's not like, okay, we made this decision, this is how we're going to work, big sigh, we're good. We've made this decision, this is how we're going to work this month, or maybe for the next 2 months. And we're constantly evolving in both how we do things, in process, what's our decision-making process. Boards can't, let's face it, Zoom, WebEx, Ring, whatever you use is a two-dimensional platform. So we don't have, while we can see people's faces, and that's better than a conference call, we don't have those other body language interactions, and the quality of our decision-making, while it's been good, is it as good as it can be? And what we're finding is, everybody waves goodbye when they leave because we're missing those rituals of closing meetings. And it's just a constant striving to do things in the best way we can under lots of changing circumstances.
A constant evolution, sometimes devolution, and attempt to move forward despite the challenges.
Absolutely. And in some ways, we've realized we can do this, and we can make decisions, and we can implement, and we can continue on, but it certainly doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, for sure. We miss the sidebar conversations, which are not possible in Zoom. So when it comes to the I'm going to call it the CEO Symposium, even though that's not the official title, but that's what we end up calling
That's what we call
it. Which is geared at, facilitating that relationship between a board chair and the chief staff officer. And we have a lot of association leaders who attend this event year after year. But we know the typical chair doesn't step onto a board in that position. So if your chair is a board member that you've known for years and you've worked with them collaboratively, why is a session like this one still helpful?
You've worked with them, but not in this capacity, not as essentially a leadership partnership, not in a way that expects you to collaborate all the time, expects you to communicate all the time. And you work together in a very different way. That the CEO Symposium helps you understand each other's work styles, because, you may or may not know if this person is a morning person or a night owl, or jumps to conclusions, or, you may not know all those nuances of the relationship you have to build. It's also, every time I was a CEO for 14 years and I attended this symposium as a participant, and it's different every time because it's a different partnership. It's a different, people have different levels of experience. And even if this person's been on the board for a long time, it's just a different, the requirements of your leadership partnership is such that you really should spend some time making sure you both understand each other and how you're going to make this work, and how you're collaboratively going to also lead the board and lead the organization.
Especially in such a tumultuous time when there is so much change.
Yes, I know a couple of execs that I've talked to who said, I've had weekly or more frequently than weekly calls and Zoom meetings with my board chair or my board chair and immediate past chair or whatever, because we've had to. That's not normal for us, but that's what's been required, and understanding that you can actually do that. We've also had some say, my board chair disappeared. That this got really hard and my board chair disappeared. So the CEO Symposium, it helps you build and establish that relationship in a way that says, hopefully no more of this craziness, but when the tough stuff comes along, we know each other well enough and have a firm foundation in our working relationship that we will address them together.
And I think even as the pandemic draws to an end, the tough stuff's not going away. I don't imagine any time in the near future. So we've offered this event. Last year it was entirely virtual. This year we're offering it in both a virtual and an in-person format. Is there a difference in the content that participants should consider when they're deciding which format is best for them and their board chair?
The content really isn't different. It's presented in some different ways. And we have to, when it's virtual, you have to accommodate time zones. When you're all in the same room together, 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock. But the content and the value is really pretty equivalent. When I was a CEO, the value to me was the time I spent with that incoming chair, the time that we got to know each other, speaking as a staff person, probably don't get that much time together, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, ever. I mean, if you get an hour or two, you're lucky. So you have that time together. It's structured so that conversations happen in a good way. It allows you also to branch off and talk about whatever is important to you and the organization at that time. So while it's a different experience, for those who haven't participated in virtual, we still have those conversations. You get your own little Zoom room, and you and your board chair or whoever your team is that's there, go off and have your own conversation virtually, and then you come back and we have further conversations. So some of the experience is actually pretty equivalent, even though it's virtual versus sitting at a table and being face to face. We would argue, and most people would say, it's not the same, and it's not the same. But in terms of the conversations, in terms of time together to build the connection and build the relationship, both of them are very, very good.
And probably, if people have concerns still about being in person, starting off in a way that makes both of you comfortable is probably a good start.
Yeah, we've actually doing the virtual, because we've done a number of them, both for the Canadian Society and also for the American Society. There were times when the chief staff executive and chief elected officer were comfortable being together, but not being in a room with everybody else. And so they actually got together and did it together in their office, but virtually in regards to the rest of the community that was in the room, that would have been in the room together. So they chose to do that, and it works out really well, no matter how you choose to do it. It's just the outcome. We had people, the first time we did a virtual one, somebody said, well, I really didn't know what to expect, but this was way better than I expected. I'm not sure if that's high praise, but it was definitely, we got a lot out of it. We were able to build a relationship. We were able to talk a lot about the organization. So virtual or face-to-face really is really your preference, but you will get a valuable experience out of either one.
Perfect. And just final thoughts. Associations, as we know, in this time have a lot of competing priorities and objectives. And so what do you think makes the CEO Symposium, this day and a half that they'll spend together, a really good use of their time?
Wow, as someone who was an attendee for 12 years, I can't say enough about the information that comes in, and as the staff person, I found it was nice to build consistency between the volunteer leaders, but the time we got to spend together, the time we got to talk about the organization in depth. And if you do the face-to-face, it doesn't stop when the day is over. You go out to dinner, you have breakfast together, all of those things. There's nothing that can replace that. And investing in that, I would look at the cost and go, wow, should we do that this year? But you can't put a value on investing in the current and future of your the present and the future of your organization. It's an invaluable time to spend together.
Yeah, the decisions that get made in one year are going to influence the association for years to come. So
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Donna. This is really one of the most popular and respected events that we do. And we look forward to hosting it in partnership with the Tecker Group again this year. Look forward to
being with you.
Thanks.